All right, yes indeed. Let's believe this is DC's only independent radio station. We Act Radio, broadcasting live on the radical side. Martin Luther King Avenue, the underbetter nation's capital, the foothills, Cedar Hill, the Lime and the Casa for the Douglas home, the bicentennial. Having said all that, I'm joining the studio with some incredible young people because Alice Walker said the greatest power is convincing people they don't have any. And oftentimes, we have been, as black people, led to believe that we don't have any power. You can't fight City Hall, there's nothing you can do. And all of that is completely and utterly false and untrue. Because we are the leaders we've been waiting for. And we have been joined in the studio with some young people who have decided to take upon themselves to rise to the occasion. And with the unceremonious resignation of a disgraced Councilman Jack Evans, we are ushering in a new era of DC politics. Here to join me in the studio today with this insurgent campaign to challenge the establishment, to challenge the status quo, we have Ward 7's Anthony Lorenzo Green.
Hey, nice to be here today with you, come on. Nice to be here with my sister Janeese, and to make sure that we flip some tables this year.
Flip some tables?
Yes.
I'm with that. Flip some tables. It's the 55th anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X, and we see this great documentary out. I urge you to watch it as well. And because a result of that documentary done by our brother here in D.C., they are now looking into the case again. They're thinking about reopening the case again, and it's because of that work. So you can always do something. And then Miss Janeese, I just got to say, full disclosure, the first political campaign I ever contributed to and made a contribution to was this young lady's campaign.
Thank you.
I gave her Harriet Tubman stamped on $20 bills. She accepted it with no problem. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
For jumping out there, representing Ward 4.
Yes, represent Ward 4. I'm
Uptown.
Uptown. I am from Uptown. Up top. I am an Uptown girl. Grew up on Kennedy Street, so I'm KDY.
Okay.
Is where I grew up. But I am so happy to be here with my brother Lorenzo, here to be with you. Listen, well-behaved women never made history.
Hey, well-behaved people, that's right.
Right?
You know,
well-behaved people, well-behaved women have never made history.
You know?
So this is a critical time and a critical moment, and standing on the shoulders of so many giants, right? I got my black hat on. This was Shirley Chisholm.
That's right.
Unbought and unbossed, right? Yeah. And that's what she talked about, being unbossed, challenging the system, and doing so relentlessly for the people. And so that's
well, let's start there. How do you think we go on from the legacy of Shirley Chisholm? And first, I have to say that we have a wonderful production of a one-woman show of Shirley Chisholm, Campaign 72. Where she was not only the first black person to run for president of the United States, she also was the first woman to run for president of the United States in Campaign 72. It's a one-woman show, been held at the Eaton Hotel, 1201 K Street, Northwest. The shows is February today, February 21st and 22nd, and then also on March 1st. On March 1st, it will be Shirley Chisholm Day here in Washington, D.C., and it's also going to be opportunity to support We Act Radio. So if you go on March 1st, part of the proceeds will go to We Act Radio, Eaton Hotel, March 1st, 7 o'clock. One woman show, the Campaign of 72 with Miss Shirley Chisholm. Now, having said that, her documentary was Unbossed. How do we go from Campaign 72, unbossed, to billionaires buying elections like Bloomberg? And that's the apple has not only fallen from the tree, it has rolled down the hill, it done went through the gutter.
And not only that, it's like a campaign from those that came before us, those that we were taught to respect and, bow every time they walk into the room, where they're shaming a new generation of saying, we didn't get the promises that were made to us. So how all of a sudden are we supposed to coalesce around a billionaire that built a career of destroying the lives of black families across this country, especially in New York City? 2 billionaires. Right. So how do we get to that point?
Yeah, that's what we are.
And I don't understand that, because for me, I'm just walking in the footsteps of what I was told and what I was taught. I went to Merritt Elementary in Ward 7, which is now MPD 6th District headquarters. And they used to have us in a room and watch to keep our eyes on the prize all day, every day. And all of a sudden we get to a point where we're not even realizing those ideas that we were taught. It's all about chasing money. I live a life of not chasing money because I don't want to be that person. That's why I'm proud to run a campaign in the Fair Elections program. I'm only taking donations from real people, no PAC money, no corporations. I'm not bought. I'm not for sale. No one can buy me. because I want everyone in Ward 7 to understand that we need leadership that's dedicated and committed to everyday people in our communities, not to hospital executives or the rich developer class in the city that pushes out Black-owned businesses for national corporations to make money off of us.
Exactly. And then after a successful political career, they go and work for some of these same corporations.
Yeah. And
as a reward.
Think tanks, you know, they go sit on corporate boards, you know, they make money for themselves while the rest of us still have to pick up the pieces and move forward to try to make sure that we have a city that's for people coming behind us.
Now, people often say, you know, that we're you're conspiracy theorists. You think people sit around and actually, you know, plan a plot against, you know, the benefit of the people? I'm like, yes.
Oh, absolutely.
There are think tanks. They're called the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
absolutely.
The co-founder of Heritage Foundation is on record saying that he doesn't want people to vote. That their chances of winning is when the voting turnout is low.
Right.
And that's why we have voter suppression. You see what happened in Georgia with Stacey Abrams. We see it all across the country.
Yeah.
But you guys are standing up to that. And in DC, I'm proud to say we do have some level of campaign finance reform, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell us about how that has affected and how you've been implementing it in your runs.
Yeah, I mean, so this is the first year we have the fair elections candidacy happening, where we're public finance candidates. So you don't accept any money from developers, corporate money, any PACs. Individuals are the only persons who can give you money. And for us in our ward races, it's $50 each of us, maximum. And that gets matched 5-1 for DC residents.
5-1.
That's correct.
And this is the first year.
This is the first year this is happening.
In the post Jack Evans DC politics.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing.
And you even hear some of the talking heads locally, they're, you know, throwing shots at it like, oh, why are we using tax money for this? Because y'all been using tax money to fill the pockets of developers while working class folks are still struggling to survive, still struggling to get the same amenities that they're seeing across the city, still struggling for their family members to come back home who are caught up in the criminal justice system, sent around the country. But then we have to have this big old fight whether there should be a home for them right here in this city.
Yeah.
So it's real for us. It's real life. We walk this truth and we carry that burden every day. So when I step outside my door, it's not my campaign. It's truly the people's campaign.
That's right.
You know, they invested in it. It's their money and they expect us to succeed.
Yeah, and I think the importance of that is also when we talk about people donating to the campaign, it means our votes aren't bought before we get on the council. And so there's an opportunity there for us to be able to make our voting decisions based on the people's needs and what they care about. And it also means that we have an opportunity here to get this developer and corporate money out of our city that's a lot of the times have cheated us of benefits that we're supposed to have. And so when people talk about, oh, it's wasting taxpayers' dollars, no, you want to make sure that you have leaders who are beholden to the people, because we waste more money in tax dollars when we give contracts to developers and corporations that end up having no employees, like we saw with the sports gambling contract. It came out later that there were no employees a part of that contract with the intralot. So we've lost millions of dollars using with contractors who paid to political campaigns. So that's why this is so important. DC taxpayers don't want to lose money every year on corrupt contracts with people. They want politicians and leaders who are going to care about them. And so fair elections gives us an opportunity to do that, will do that. And it's the first step forward. I would say we have way more reforms, many more other reforms to take. But I think this is the first step in getting developer and corporate money out of our political system.
Well, I think that you guys have truly rose to the occasion and taken advantage of that first step. You know what they say, you know, give them an inch.
Yeah.
And your guys are taking it.
And it diversifies the playing field, right? So you don't have to be well connected and know millionaires before you decide to run. You're an everyday person, and everyday people need to be represented on the council. And we see people on the council who are not from our neighborhoods, who don't understand. We've had family members incarcerated. We've had friends and neighbors killed and murdered. I've been able to work in schools and see what underserved schools look like. Those are the voices that are missing on the council right now that need to be there to speak some truth to power. And so when you have fair elections, you can diversify the field, and anyone who is a part of our community has a chance finally to step up and be a leader in our community.
And we know people talk a lot about voter apathy and how people don't come out to vote, they don't participate. And I tell folks all the time, I've been running for ANC for 7 years now, and everyone that's ever came out to vote for me were first-time voters. That's
really?
only because they see themselves on the commission, and now they have a chance to see themselves on the council. They don't see people that represents their narrative, their walk in life, their struggles every day, making decisions for us down at the Wilson building.
Right.
So of course I'm going to stand up and say, I'm not going to take these developer money. The same money that pushed out black-owned businesses in Deanwood or other parts of Ward 7, same developers that are giving money to all these other council members, including my own, you know, it's the same thing. How can I face these people face to face and say, I represent you while this developer is putting money in my pocket? I will never do that.
Well, you know, you took my my thunder, because I was going to ask you, what do you think needs to be done in order to, you know, get new voters, to get more people involved in the political process, to understand that they do have a stake in this, and see your campaigns as something different. To see your campaigns as being, you know, indigenous leadership that is going to be actually representative of them and their issues in their daily lives. But you both are running against establishment candidates. Both of them have close ties, either formally or currently, at the highest levels. Have your campaigns been taken serious from those establishment candidates? And what has been the feedback you've gotten from those establishment candidates about your candidacy?
I think that they have taken notice. I've been on the doors knocking, right? So I'm out every day knocking doors, talking to neighbors in the community. I'm from the community, right? I'm a third generation Washingtonian. So my family is born and raised here in the city, and most of my family actually lives in Ward 4, goes to Ward 4 schools. And so I'm in the community having these conversations and knocking on these doors. And I know they feel the change and the rise that is coming. And so many people have said, you know, we have had voter apathy because we've kind of had a passed down situation in Ward 4 where Fenty chose Muriel and Muriel chose Brandon. And so that kind of caused some of the voter apathy in Ward 4, whereas, no one's going to be...
That's kind of like the hookup. That's not necessarily...
Yeah, and so you have leadership that looks at being a council member as a right and not a privilege. And so they're so happy when I'm having conversations with them for someone to say, what do you care about? What are the issues facing you? And I relate to them like, yes, I struggle. My family has had housing issues and displacement issues. I connect with you on that. Yes, the young girl goes to a public elementary school, who wants the same access to opportunity no matter where you live in the community. That was me too, growing up from 2nd and Kennedy Street. And look at me, I'm here now running for office. And that gets them, that makes them understand, and they get excited. When I talk about job, my mom is a postal worker and she's a member of the American Postal Worker Union.
Is she a disgruntled postal worker?
No, she's
I was a disgruntled postal worker for 9 years, so I'm speaking from experience.
No, but she, my mom, believes. So I believe in unions, and I know the importance of having of good union jobs. And so when you see development happen like that happened on the Southwest waterfront, we had that development happen and didn't produce any union jobs. I don't understand how that happens, because I know that union jobs, living wages and fair wages, is what keeps our families able to survive and to be able for my mother to have food on the table for me, a bed for us to sleep in, to have access to health care. And so people in Ward 4 have been very receptive to me and talking to me because I'm speaking the truth. It's authentic. I don't have to make anything up. This is my real life story. This is what, everything in housing, education, health has all impacted my family, impacted my neighbors. And I think they're excited for some authenticity.
Yeah.
And so I know that, the candidate has been, watching because they've been trying to knock on as many doors as me. And so this is a marathon, and, I'm going to keep fighting, keep running.
And the
keep
marathon continues.
That's
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. Well, I have the pleasure of going up against 2 machines in Ward 7. So, there's an established candidate, but there's 2 pots of money floating around in the ward. And no one wanted to take me seriously because they're like, oh, Lorenzo. Who's Lorenzo? He's a rabble rouser. Until I showed with the numbers. Like, oh, where is he getting all these donations from? Everyday people in Ward 7. Got the most Ward 7 donations out of all the candidates, the most DC donations out of all the candidates. So we shook the system. The day I made the announcement that we met the threshold for fair elections, my phone was ringing off the hook. Other candidates and people from their teams were like, why is Lorenzo running? Why is he in this race? Go ask the people that asked me to run. Go ask the people along Sheriff Road or Pennsylvania Avenue or Minnesota or East Capitol or Benning Road, communities that have been ignored for a long time. Ask them why I'm running. They don't want to keep the charade that we've been having in Ward 7 for too long. For over the last 15 years, our seat has been holding to one man. So folks want to change. They want opportunities for their families in our communities. They want a grocery store, but they also want a grocery store that is going to have union jobs where families can ensure that they have labor protections instead of all these non-unionized grocery stores flooding our city right now. They're tired of the games being played about Walmart and whether Walmart was supposed to come and whether they signed a deal or not. But we're still in 2020.
Walmart bad, Costco good.
Yeah, you know, but it was
we got two Walmarts in Ward 4, unfortunately.
Not that I want a Walmart, but it's a narrative that folks, they see it. They see what's happening in the city. The Targets, the Walmart, any grocery store that you want, we're not seeing it come to outside of town.
Are you open to co-ops?
That's actually part of my platform.
Is that
because
right?
I don't want us to get into a space for another decade where we're chasing these national large retailers to come to our community.
Because we definitely need a new business model. I think this is what
Absolutely.
creates an opportunity for us because we've been, as you said, neglected. And so we can actually establish our own models.
And
we can actually build ourselves.
In some of the communities on the Maryland side of the border. Like, they're doing that. I'm like, why is it such a hard thing for us to pull our money together to have a community-owned grocery store where we can build equity in it?
It goes back to us being taught to believe that we're supposed to be working for someone, that we're supposed to be begging people for jobs. We're supposed to be
instead of creating our own pipeline for jobs.
Exactly. You know, I tell people shamelessly. I tell people, I should say shamefully. I should say is that my father's family. We've had an apartment on 12th and Rhode Island, Northwest in Shaw for 30 years. From the 60s to the 90s, my family rented an apartment. My grandfather's apartment became my father's apartment, and then it became my first apartment. And then when the metro station opened in Shaw, the rent went up, and I had to move. No one cared that this has been in my family for over 30 years. No one told us that, you know, hey, if you guys had switched over to condos, you know, I was 30 before I knew what the difference between an apartment and a condo was. Went to 12 years of school, 2 years of college, and no one told me the difference between a condo and an apartment. Oh, a condo is an apartment you own. My family should own this condo. When I drive by, I shudder.
You get upset.
Because that's how you build wealth. I could be charging some of these new residents to live in my family's condo. But because we didn't have information, we didn't know anything about TOPA. You know, tenants could actually buy the building. We don't, you know, and these things have been on the books for years. But because the information is outside our purview,
it was.
But we're changing that now.
Right. And we really can throw that ball in the lap of leaders that we've had over the years. They were not intentional in trying to make sure that families have protections and knew the information so they can survive. But here's the flip side of that. We have families who were in those apartments, looked across the street, got into those homes through the HPAP program. Then years later, in their years where they're supposed to be aging in place, they're losing those homes, whether it's through reverse mortgages. They're losing them through sinkholes and having the city come and say, oh, well, it's a private property issue. It's not our responsibility. I'm sorry. It is your responsibility, because when you go to the historic record of all these properties, there have been issues with these homes for ages that never were resolved until a white developer came into the neighborhood and decided to flip it and sell it to black families. And now we're stuck with the bill. We're stuck with trying to fix the infrastructure in our communities. So there's a return on investment that a lot of our seniors have not gotten. My own grandmother had to have a conversation with me to basically challenge me, like, this is about our survival. You have to find ways to protect our home, to save our home, and the homes of all my friends in this neighborhood.
Now, come on, that triggered me when you talked about being a renter. For
30
for
plus
some
years.
So when you talk about, was it intentional, right? Was gentrification intentional? Was displacement intentional? When you think about it, African Americans all over this city, we were renting our homes. We didn't have the knowledge. It was not being pushed. And some of us were being denied mortgage based on our race, right? And so that's how displacement was able to happen. So,
you mean redlining?
Yeah.
That some billionaire candidates are blaming the financial crisis on
Blaming us.
by you know by making redlining illegal. That is why you have all these financial problems. Okay,
so
just want to throw that out there.
For me, when I came home from college, you know, I was met with the news from my mom that the house we grew up in, the rent had already gone up twice since I was gone, and it was going up a third time. And so my mom, you know, even with a good union job, right, couldn't afford for us to stay there any longer. And I'm coming home from college. This is my first time even realizing that we rented. right? Because like you said, I didn't have a concept of that. But the rent gone up third time. So I was starting law school. So I had to get a job as a waitress, got a job working in Nordstrom Rack, did law school at the same time to be able to have my family and to help my mom. And so we ended up finding another home in our ward, in Ward 4. And here's the thing, and this is where the tote rights come in. 5 years later, after that happened, the house we end up moving into to rent, the owner said, I'm selling, you guys have to go. Me now, I had finished law school, everything. I said, you know what? No, we're not. I'm exercising my TOPA rights, my tenant opportunity protect right, my first right of refusal, and I'm buying that home, right? And I bought the home, and we were able to stop my family from displaced.
I wish I could have seen the look, the glazed look.
Yeah.
When you respond. You ever tell white people no? Have you ever happened? It's a strange
during the closing
configuration.
During the closing, they were like at the closing table, they were still upset. But then, literally 9 months later, my council member in Ward 4 and a number of other council members co-sponsored a bill to take away TOPA rights from single-family renters. So that same power that I just used to stop my family from displacement, they completely were willing to take it away. And so here we are, our last, this was a last affront for me and our family to say, hey, no, I want to buy this house. Here's my first right of refusal. Why would you as a leader, knowing that we've had 20,000 residents displaced already, knowing what's happening in our city, take away a TOPA rights from single family renters? African American families were those renters who were in these homes for years. And they should have a right to say, hey, if you're going to sell, can I have the opportunity to buy? Now that opportunity is gone. So when you ask, is it intentional? When you have leaders making decisions like that, it seems very intentional to me that you're on the side of the developer and not on the side of the people.
Well, it's clear there's in the absence of any retention plan for long-time residents, small businesses in the city, mom and pops included, it is intentional. Now, you are in Ward 4, uptown. You are in the midst of gentrification in a very hard, heavy-handed way. Lorenzo, you are still ahead of the curve east of the river on Ward 7. How does that, that current status inform or guide your actions in addressing, creating a retention plan for long-time residents, small businesses in your ward or throughout the city?
Well, it really challenges us to not go along with the status quo and just go along with the policies that have been pushed on us for years. It means that, we have to be active and engaged and willing to stop and slow down a lot of development that's happening on outside. Like, for example, in Deanwood, we're dealing with the issue of Neighborhood Development Company. Yes, they've been, a good partner to some of the River Terrace folks when it comes to trying to build out a mini market. But at the same time, they pushed out Black-owned businesses in Deanwood to put more housing in our community. A community that's already have a lot of housing developments popping up. So you have a lot of new neighbors who are trying to figure out, okay, I bought this home, where are the amenities that go with it? But all I see is more people coming into the community, but nothing to match it. So now we have so much growth, but no access to retail, no transportation options. Can't even get a free circulator to come to our end. That seems to be benefiting tourists in the city, but not us. So it's a challenge for all of us to really step outside the box and find different ways to slow down and stop some of these development projects that are not beneficial. And that development project itself was one that was lowly ranked by the DC Auditor's Office. So even they were trying to figure out, why was this approved? Well, we know why it was approved. Because of his political connections. Because his sister so happens to work for Mayor Bowser. Because of all the checks that he's been putting out into our council members' pocket. It's all connected. But unfortunately, it's affecting families in our community. And it's not lost on us that the announcement of that project happened the same day that viral stop and frisk incident happened in front of Nook's Barbershop. Nook's Barbershop, which is not standing there anymore.
The issue of this viral stop and frisk stop.
Well, I know, I'll put it like this. That happened in summer 2018. For like the last year and a half, I had to deal with a lot of emotional labor and trauma around that issue with my own people. Because folks are trying to understand, why am I so defiant when it comes to stop and frisk? Because when it comes to public safety, if you want to build a safe community, you have to hear the voices of everybody in that community. So when you have people telling you the trauma that they're going through every day when it comes to police that we ask to sit on every corner, we have to listen to that and figure out, why won't these same people talk to police a week later when something happens in front of their house? They will not talk to a police officer that abused them a week prior. It is simple concept for us.
Exactly.
So we have to reimagine what safety is. And that incident happened in front of a very popular barbershop in this community, one that I used to get my hair cut at. So when you're sicking police on this Black-owned barbershop, the same day that you're making an announcement of $11.4 million investment from the city to redevelop that whole entire block, everyone is going to connect the dots. They immediately jump to the conclusion that y'all don't even want us here.
That's right.
You want to push us out.
You want the poor people to quietly leave.
Yeah, and you're using the police as a tool to do that. And that's what gets lost in a lot of these conversations. They're like, oh, I love my police officer. I'm like, they're being used as a tool. It's really the policies that are being pushed that set these conditions where we have adversarial conditions in our community with police and community members. I mean, that's just what it is. And we see it play out over and over and over. Stop and frisk is still an issue here in the District of Columbia. It just saddens me that we don't have a mayor that believes that.
Well, in New York, stop and frisk preceded gentrification. In D.C., we see the jump outs and the heavy-handed policing in our community.
And this has been going on prior to just Mayor Bowser. This happened under Mayor Gray, it happened under Mayor Fincy. It's a tactic that's been deployed.
We can even put this on the doorsteps of Mayor Anthony Williams. Ushered in this rapid gentrification. He's mostly responsible for D.C. having the most rapid rate of gentrification in any city in the country, according to reports. But there's been nothing has been done to offset it.
You asked a question earlier about what, I'm in Ward 4, so we've kind of already experienced that level and what we're doing. One of the initiatives that I'm a part of, a coalition, is Reclaim Rent Control.
Reclaim Rent Control.
Reclaim Rent Control. And we have not updated our rent control since 1976. Right? And so right now, buildings built before 1976 can fall within rent control, but none built after that. So Reclaim Rent Control is a movement happening right now where we're pushing for that to be buildings built before 2005, right? Can be included in rent control. It's also asking us to expand that rent control up to units that are 3-unit buildings or more, because right now it's only 5-unit buildings. When we are able to expand those numbers, right, the type of rent buildings, and then the buildings built by 2005, we're able to expand a number of rent control protections to keep people from not being in apartment buildings and then their rent skyrocketing up, right? So that's one of the ways that we are trying to help and make sure that people are not being displaced. And that's why I'm a huge supporter of the Reclaim Rent Control coalition and the work that we're doing, because rent control is up again this year. And I think the status quo thing to do is just to extend it, right? To make sure that we keep rent control 10 more years. And so they'll extend it for 10 years. But what they won't do is add anything to it. And so in order for us to get something out of this, we have to reach beyond the status quo of just extending it and expanding it, right? And so that's one of the things I'm working on. I want to see our small businesses be able to survive. In our area, and we had DC Reynolds closed, which is kind of Ward 1, but we consider it a part of a Ward 4 place we go in our community. We also had a few places on Upshur Street closed recently. And what happens is you have condos being built on the same corridors as businesses, which makes the rent have to go up. So DC Reynolds rent went from $4,000 to $7,000, and they just couldn't afford to do that. So I think, I'm looking at, is there a type of rent control we can do for small businesses, or is there a way we change the zoning variants to keep some of the business corridors as business corridors so that that price doesn't go up. But I'm thinking of innovative ways to make sure that our small businesses are able to thrive. We have really great small businesses in Ward 4, and I want to see them stay and not go through the same rents going up. And a lot of them are small businesses, are a part of our culture. And when you invest in small businesses, you're investing in families, you're investing in the community.
We just saw Horace and Dickey's.
Exactly, we just saw Horace Dickey's and Dickey's close. Exactly.
And
that was a Friday institution
right.
for my family.
And everyone will tell you that it's been very difficult to go to Horace and Dickey's and get some fish without
parking,
DPW
ticketing,
trying to ticket you and tow your vehicle. And
aggressive.
It's sort of like an afterthought, but it's something that everyone that has gone to that establishment has experienced. Especially along the 8th Street corridor. So now that Ward 7 is having a conversation about extending the streetcar and Benning Road reconstruction, my thing is I want to make sure that we're not repeating what happened on 8th Street. We're not going to destroy all the black businesses in Ward 7 just because we want to create another transportation option. Even though we do need more transportation options, we need to do it in a way where there's intentional protections for small businesses in our ward and across our city. It's a Trojan horse that we saw play out with our family, our friends, and people we know. They're no longer here. My great aunt used to preach on 8th Street.
Right.
Stand on the corner, 8th and H, with her little boombox and her Sunny best. Okay? That's what she used to do.
Yeah.
All those years when there was no investment. Now it's hard to see people that look like us. So I'm hoping that we get more intentional protections for our small businesses.
Well, we've had some losses, but we also had some victories.
Absolutely.
We're losing Horace and Dickey's on 8th Street. But we had a new addition. We have Kitchen Cray. That's opening. Shout out to those brothers, Kitchen Cray on 8th Street. That's opening.
Can I shout out Social Kitchen in Uptown? Follow Social Kitchen DC.
What block they on?
14th Street. So it's on 14th and 14th in Colorado. Social Kitchen's a dope.
Cafe or something over there on Georgia Avenue. I'm loving some brothers running.
And MLK Deli is expanding towards 7 because the brother that owns that is from Deanwood.
Okay.
So he will be opening a location.
And it's important that we support these businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, less Popeyes and more small businesses. Yeah. This is what people need to understand is really how you invest in your community.
Yeah. So it'd be nice if we can have a Kitchen Crate and a Horace and Dickey's on 8th Street.
Yeah.
Just one or the other.
And hopefully we could see that happen. I got that information late. I had asked them about maybe 2 years ago, everything was fine. They told me everything was fine then.
Yeah.
And so obviously that has changed, but because there's a lot of things we could have done. And as there's a lot of things we still can do. Like when Sankofa Video Books on Georgia Avenue was having a problem with their property taxes. Property taxes still been used as a legal redlining because they can quadruple your property tax with no justification, really.
None.
There's no checks and balances in how they determine what is your rate. And so that's some legislation I would like to see some change. I think it should be a cap on whatever your property tax was when you took possession of this. It should stay there. It shouldn't continually escalate. That sliding scale should be for new people that's coming in, and you came in at that rate, they came in at this rate, but you should be grandfather claused in and capped.
And it's crazy you mentioned that because that's, at least for a 7C's position, that's what we've been trying to do with a lot of development projects, making sure that there is intentional language in writing in black and white that says, this person that you're pushing out or this business you're pushing out can come back at the same rates that they were before you showed up in our community. And that's something that we're still negotiating with the developer that pushed out Nook's Barbershop and Little Jewels Daycare. But the city, unfortunately, is moving faster than we are. AKA, they're making negotiations with this developer without the community being.
We are all struggling. We are all fighting this, and we all got to be invested. Just here on We Act Radio, our neighbors at Checked Enterprises, our neighbors from District Culture. If it wasn't for the legislation that Ron Moulton spearheaded with Kenya McDuffie and Robert White to make sure that we get opportunities for our buildings to be purchased and we can stay in place.
But
all of us
beyond just piecemeal, though.
Yeah, but see, once you have a success, it can then be replicated.
Yeah.
And that's why so many of these things have been fought tooth and nail because they know the floodgates going to open. If I do it for you, then I got to do it for them. And that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But even speaking of development, there still has to be some accountability and oversight. And I think that's one of the things a council member role is to have oversight and accountability over the development that's happened. So we have developers who come in and get tax abatements, right? Like the Line Hotel in Adams Morgan. They got a $40 million tax abatement. They were supposed to hire DC residents. They were supposed to use DC contractors. They didn't do it. And when it came out, they didn't do it. We were like, hey, they should give us the $40 million back. And the administration was like, oh, well, they made a good faith effort. Well, if we're not going to be
good faith effort,
right, like a good faith effort, what is that, right?
Okay.
So if
I'm
we're
going to
use
that when they come to me for some tax money.
You should. That's a great idea.
I made a good faith effort.
I got your back.
Taxation while representation.
That's what I'm going to say. So if we're going to have, and I always say, you don't have to be pro-developer to be pro-development. We want to see our communities grow and have
we're not here to
development
protect,
in it.
right?
Right,
Absolutely.
right. But we want to make sure that's done responsibly.
Yes.
And that if you're supposed to have a certain percentage of affordable housing, you stick to that. Every single time you'll be able to be like, oh, we're going to have 20 units. And then it goes down to 15. And then somehow by the end of the project, it's 5 units of affordable housing. And no one's checking that, right? You can't develop in this neighborhood if you're not going to produce good union jobs. You can't develop in this neighborhood if you're not going to give us affordable housing in it. You can't develop if you're not going to use black and minority, contractors, DC contractors. You're not going to be able to do that. So I think I want to see, I plan on, as the council member, being a fierce oversight. You're not going to come in here and just develop and take from the people and not give to the people. And that's why it's important to have leadership on the council that's for the people.
And contractors are not just using DC for the address.
Facts, you're right.
Okay, we have a long list of contractors that say they're DC contractors, and they all piled up at the same address somewhere. And they're like, who are you? What's your connection? Where are you from? And why come?
There's a lot of that going on.
Right, and how come my friend, my neighbor, my friend down the street can't get none of these deals?
There's law firms that pay extra money to have, a Pennsylvania Avenue address. There's lobbyists that pay extra money to have a K Street address, even though they're not physically on those streets. They might be on 9th, but they pay a little extra to say they on,
Right.
That's a lot of that going on. But, Lorenzo, one of the things that I've learned since I've been here, we operate here in Anacostia, going into our 9th year. Thank you. It came to our attention that for over 25 years, there was no bookstores east of the river, in Ward 7 and Ward 8. There is now in Ward 8, but it's still none in Ward 7. And there's a deep connection between violence, crime, and illiteracy.
Yes.
They do prison population projections based upon 3rd grade reading scores.
Yes.
There is, I tell this story because some people think that's just a cliche.
Yeah.
I was at Ballou High School. I was teaching a writing workshop. Shout out to, my sister's name. I'm waiting for her name to hit me. First person that put me in the classroom. and it's their 25th anniversary, so she's going to kill me. Don't worry, I'm going to put your name on this video when we post it.
It's like a little pop-up bubble.
No, I wasn't I was hired at Hart.
Okay.
But this particular class, I was at Ballou, and there was a young man, he had Machiavelli written on his jeans. And I thought it was a teaching moment I could reach him. Yeah. I said, brother, you know who Machiavelli was? He said, yeah, it was Tupac. I was like, nah, brother, Tupac read a book about Machiavelli when he was locked up.
How about that?
Here's a dictionary. Let's look up Machiavelli to find out who he was.
I understand why Tupac put that out there.
Man, he kicked the book over, knocked the desk down, like, I don't even know that shit, and stormed out. And I'm standing there shocked, like, I thought we was about to square off or something. Like, what just happened? And the young sister said, he can't read very well. He couldn't read very well. And I saw him react violently.
Yep.
And it's harder to get books into some prisons than it is to get drugs in some of those prisons. So putting that on you, you're the last ward in the city that doesn't have a bookstore.
Yeah.
How does that resonate with your campaign, and what would you be willing to do to spearhead a literacy campaign if you were to be Victor in Ward 7?
I'll tell you, it's the same thing that teachers have been telling us for years. That when we have students in our classroom who are struggling to read and write, it's going to affect the community at large. And teachers are still telling us to that day. The only thing is they want this burden to be shared with the community and leadership in our city, as opposed to everyone just leaving their kids in that building and think that the teacher can just do it all. They can set the framework and set the landscape, but we as a village have to continue that. So anytime there is any conversation about the illiteracy rate in Ward 7 and 8, we have to understand that it is connected to the rise of violent crime in our communities. So yes, someone is going to violently react to be put on the spot to look at a book or read a book because it reveals their own truth that they're not even comfortable sharing or talking about. It is something that people are not comfortable in talking about. So as a Ward 7 council member, of course, I feel it's my duty in order to ensure that we have safe communities all over Ward 7, that we're going at the root causes of a lot of these causes of violence, including being intentional in spreading the wealth of all this money flowing into the city to invest in bookstores, invest in libraries. We still don't have the size libraries that we were promised. Like in Deanwood, it's 7,000 square foot library, should be 20,000 square foot library. Same thing over at Benning and Thornton Heights Library. We're given crumbs as opposed to what our full investment should be. So that would be my goal, to make sure that money, tax dollars are flowing right into Ward 7 communities, making sure that business owners and entrepreneurs, because we have so many in our community, get the opportunity to open these businesses. The problem is they're not getting those opportunities, and they surely cannot pay that high rate, that high rent to open up a store that our community needs. We don't even have a coffee shop. A bookstore / coffee shop where I can go down with my laptop or, use the Wi-Fi and read all the books that I want. I still have a book that I need to return to the library, but
But you made a good faith effort.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I got the email, DC Library. I'll get it back, But, we have to be very intentional how we're doing investments.
You need to be intentional.
Yeah, because right now it's just giving money to developers and let them build whatever they want without the community being at the table.
And you guys are off to a great start, running great campaigns. I'm very proud of both of you.
You just said literacy, so I have to mention this because I want this to come out. I got to talk about this. the Washington Met closing, right?
Yes.
You're talking about an alternative school
Yeah.
that
We did a program
served
on
some of our most vulnerable students.
And the students was defending
And the
closing.
students, I met
Yes.
one of the students, Lyric Johnson. Shout out to her. She's actually Ward 4, so shout out to Lyric for standing up for herself. But shout out to Robert White for the emergency legislation. But we're in this space where the school board unanimously voted that school should not be closed, right? You had the community PTA associations, education alliances, all saying this school should not be closed. The students in that school just should be better invested in, right? We're $15 billion budget in this city, and we're closing down schools, and because you haven't invested in those schools, and the students in those schools are students who have dealt with real life trauma that has brought them to that school, and they're looking for help with learning how to read. They're looking for a safe space. And they didn't invest in the social workers in that school. They didn't invest in the teachers. They didn't invest in the books. And then they're willing to close it. So I would be remiss when you talk about this, when we talk about where we are as priorities, right, in our city. I always say we don't have a revenue problem. We have a priorities problem.
Yes.
And when you're closing down schools like Washington Met, it shows where your priorities are.
We don't have a revenue problem.
It's-
We have a priority
So I'm
problem.
sorry I had to go on that rant,
no,
but when
it's real.
you mentioned
That's-
literacy, right, those were
It's
7
real.
students, 8 students, 4 students, 5 students who had dealt real life trauma issues, and our council members did not stand up for them.
And it hits home for me
Exactly.
because I was one of those kids at H.D. Woodson that dropped out in 12th grade. But thankfully, I had a teacher that said, you know what? You smart as hell. I'm going to make sure I work with you to make sure you get your GED so you can get right into the workforce and live the life that's promised to you. But just imagining today, the kids that did not work well in their neighborhood schools found a different space that did work well for them. The only thing they asked for is the same investments, more investments, intentional investments, not disinvestments, which is what they've been experiencing. At every one of those community meetings, especially the one at Martha's Table, the one I was at, it was unanimous. They're like, no, the excuses that you're giving us are been excuses that we've been hearing for the last decade. Ever since we started this experiment of mayoral control of schools.
Right.
Exactly.
We've seen this play out. My elementary school that I went to is no longer open because Michelle Reed shut it down.
Same.
You know? So it's sort of like we watched this show play out before. You cannot come back to us and give us the same reasoning, same excuses, and think that we're going to accept it. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. So we have to make sure that we're intentional in listening to our kids when they're telling us their experiences in our public education system. And we got to listen to our teachers who are echoing that.
Yes, and again, we
And
are.
we got to end mayoral control of education.
How about
in our
that?
city.
We need to definitely end
Throw out impact evaluation
And
system
throw
while
out
we at.
impact while we're
Because
at it.
that's
Don't get us started
that's
on
not
that.
the-
Weaponized system that pushed out
That's
so
not,
many teachers.
that's not a democratic arrangement.
It's
that's
not.
an executive arrangement.
Exactly.
Yes, yes.
And we definitely need to go back to that. And one of the things, it's Black History Month. One of the things that Angela Davis said that, I'm no longer accepting things I cannot change. I'm refusing to, I'm going to change the things I can no longer accept. And you guys are doing just that. So kudos to y'all. We just got a few minutes left in the program. Well, thank y'all for coming. And hopefully you're going to come back before.
Absolutely.
We're going to speak to these issues again on a
We're going to come back when we're elected council members.
Hey, that's
Absolutely.
going to be
Okay.
great. That's going to be great.
Because we're
Before
building a
that and
coalition.
after that.
That
Because
would
this
be
is about
great.
building a coalition, shifting the power balance on the council and leadership in our city.
These young
Getting to
people-
our 7 votes so that we can get the progressive policies that we need implemented in this city. Instead of
Absolutely.
this
So
whole-
let's take that. Let's
Yeah.
make sure you get an opportunity to give your pitch, your contact information, and how people can support your campaign.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Anthony Lorenzo Green, as you know, and y'all can visit me at greenward7.com. Please, please, please make a donation. Anything less than $50. I want no more than $50. $5, $10, $20, whatever you can give.
I got 5.
Okay, because it really benefits our campaign and it benefits our community overall. It ensures that people have a direct connection to power being changed in our city. I wouldn't be in this race just for fame or trying to spread my ID or voter ID, however the opposition want to frame it as. I'm in this race because working class people have had enough. They had enough of what they've been fed and what they've been told, and they want transformative change. And that's what I feel I'm representing, those voices, and I look forward to flipping a few seats on the council this year, especially right here in
And some
Ward 7.
tables.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, and some tables.
Some tables. Flipping tables like Jesus.
What would
That's right.
What would Jesus do?
Yeah. And Shirley Chisholm said if they don't give you a chair, give you
bring
a seat.
Bring a folding chair.
Bring a folding chair.
So you can carry it with you.
So, fair elections is about bringing a folding chair to the table and gives you the opportunity. My name is Janeese Lewis George, third generation Washingtonian, born and raised in Ward 4, running in my community because I have seen the status quo happen enough already. You talked about it earlier, Kimon, but I used to be ashamed of the fact that my family dealt with housing issues and displacement issues. But then it took me a while to realize, you know what? Don't be ashamed of it. It wasn't your fault. There were people and policies that were in place for this to happen to you. Yes. And so in order for us to actually make a change, we have to change the people who are in the positions making the policies that are affecting our lives, right? And so that is what, my campaign is about, being a people-powered campaign. So you can donate up to $50. The city matches it 5-1. Please go to Janeese and the number 4dc.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Janeese for DC, on Twitter at Janeese for DC. One of the best donations I got was from a tipped worker who said, I'm giving you the last of my tips, all of my tips for today. And that amounted to about $27. But it meant something to me because the $27 was something that they worked for all day. And I knew how much it meant. He said, but I believe in you and I believe in the change you can make. And so when I got that $27, I realized, you know what? This comes with so much responsibility. And so I'm fighting for working people and working families to have a place in our city, to have a voice in our city, in Ward 4. And I'm looking forward to June 2nd, when everyone's going to come out and vote. Ward 4, Janeese, Lewis George, and Ward 7, Lorenzo, Anthony Lorenzo Green.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, running for Ward 7. All of us, yes.
Last issue, because I can't. I'll be remiss if I don't acknowledge this. DC has the highest maternal mortality rate in the country. It's the most dangerous city for a black woman. Let's call it out. For a black woman to have a baby. We have a black woman in this marriage. Seems like there should be some priorities there. And they still threatening to close the only hospital outside of Northwest. And that hospital currently does not have, and the new hospital they're proposing to build won't have a trauma unit or a maternal ward.
Yep.
And so the most children are east of the river, and the most trauma is east of the river.
And for those of us in far northeast and east of the river, our closest hospital is PG, which is not going to be there much longer. So it's sort of like we really need a full service hospital that's going to benefit all of us in Ward 7 and 8. Because the one that we have right now has been disinvested for so many years now, including from our own Ward 7 council member. So it baffles all of our minds when we're trying to fight for a good quality full service hospital with labor protections that ensures that families get union jobs in this same hospital, why our leadership isn't fighting for the same thing. It just seems like they're fighting for a building that they can put their name on some years down the road. I'm not interested in a building where you can put your name on. I'm interested in a full service hospital that's going to benefit so many families east of the river. That's our problem, and we have to flip some of these tables and get leadership out the way so that we can get exactly what we want, a return on our investment in the healthcare services that are needed. So many mothers are losing their lives, losing their babies, and it's shameful. It's shameful, and we should not.
In this city.
In this city. $15.5 billion budget. It's shameful.
And then we had a hospital, St. Elizabeth, over here that was without water for 17 days, right? Wow. In this city, a hospital without water for 17 days. But this is what is at stake in this election, because when you talk about the hospital that's being proposed, they're looking at a contractor. UHS is the contractor over that hospital. They're being sued right now by GW. Yes. And they've known for busting unions, being against unions. So we're looking at a contractor that's about to do the same thing that the Veritas did with United Medical Center. So we need leadership who's going to call out and say, we need a contractor who's going to care about people in our community. And that's what's at stake this election. When we have to get a center has to be there. A high-level trauma center has to be there. And we just had not only United Medical Center is in the state it's in, we had Providence closed. Yes. So when you had Providence closed and you had United Medical Center shut down, you have wards 5, 7, 8, all without access, right? That's mothers without access to, that's trauma victims not without access. And so that's put a burden even on hospitals like Washington Hospital Center.
Washington Hospital
right?
Center is
when I took my mom there a couple months ago, we got to the emergency room at 7:30 in the morning. She didn't get a room until 11 p.m. that night.
Wow.
Right? And that's what we're hearing it's happening at Washington Hospital Center and even at GW Hospital.
Yeah.
And I'm just not hearing that from community. I'm hearing that from the workers, the nurses, the doctors who are working in these conditions saying we have to do something about the lack of access to healthcare across this city because it affects all of us. And me as a Black woman, to know that the city that I live in with a $15 billion budget, Black women are dying every day because record levels because we're not getting the care we need. That is scary.
Gentrification is cultural genocide.
Yeah.
Same thing the owner of
And they are diametrically opposed to our existence. And
what did Malcolm X say about Black women?
And so the most disrespected and unprotected person in America is a Black woman.
Absolutely.
And here we are in the nation's capital. But we're here to change that and challenge that. I have to leave us on a note because your waitress story really touched me because I read that if you have $500 in the bank, you got $500 in there, and the average American has less than $1,000 liquid can access an emergency. And out of that $500, you spend $2.75 for a metro ride. You have spent more of your wealth than Bloomberg has spent on an election. Bloomberg is worth $64 billion. And see, sometimes these poor people don't understand how much $1 billion is. That's 999 million plus one. So that means he has 640,000 million. He spends 350 million to buy an election. He has spent less of his overall wealth than you have just spent on a metro ride. He's paying them for a metro ride. That's how much he cared.
Yeah. Because we were
And this woman gave you all her wages, all her tips for an entire day. That's how much she cared.
Right.
And it's time for us to show how much we care. Donate to these young people's campaigns. This is new leadership. This is new blood. This is what we absolutely should be having and celebrating, that young people are rising to the occasion and they're doing something. As our motto here at We Act Radio, support these campaigns, get out there and vote, bring somebody with you, register them, and by all means, stay woke. Till next time, y'all.